Welcome to Simply Money. Today we are going to be talking about one of the most important elements to achieving financial freedom, debt management. We're going to take step-by-step actions on how you can get your debt under control. Dave Ramsey says debt is normal. Let's be weird. That is something I agree with him wholeheartedly. Let's look at ways we can become debt-free coming up on Simply Money. In 2015, Money.com did a study that found that the average person will spend $280,000 during their lifetime just on interest. If you were to consider a person from age 20 to 80 as that being their lifetime financially, if they were to take that $280,000 over that lifetime, if that same money had been invested, that is $6 million. Now I understand some of that was good debt being used toward an asset like a house, but much of it is consumer debt or automobiles or depreciating assets that hold no value. Imagine even a portion of that interest being used for your financial security. Today we're going to talk about how to manage your debt. We're going to take a step-by-step action plan on how you can get your debt under control and move closer to your financial freedom. First, let's look at the different types of debt that there are. Now, if you have a house and you have a mortgage, that is a forced type of savings. That is actually a good debt as long as you're not overextending yourself. You need to make sure that the house that you buy, that you're able to put a substantial down payment on so you're not upside down in it, that you get a short-term 15-year mortgage so you're not paying all that interest over those 30 years. Don't overextend on your mortgage. But you also have things such as credit cards. Credit cards are one of the biggest detriments to our financial future and independence. Credit cards hold a high interest rate. We often find people paying minimum amounts and extending the length of time that they're paying on that debt. You also have consumer debts, personal loans. Some debt is unavoidable. I understand that. But let's focus on the debt that we have. Let's take Susan as an example. She had a lot of high interest credit cards and personal loans, and she consolidated those. Now, I'm not a fan of consolidation, but when used properly and reducing the interest rate substantially, it can help somebody make up ground. But the key is you have to solve the problem. That's the problem of charging expenses and taking out loans. You have to solve the root problem and get on a budget so you're not spending more than you make, and you can get your spending under control and you can get that debt paid off. Because if you don't, you're going to go ahead and consolidate, and then you're going to end up in the same boat, but now you have a consolidated loan, and then you start using those credit cards and personal loans again. Used with caution. But if you can cut your interest rates substantially and get on a single payment and then max those payments out to get out of debt, then use it wisely. Another quote from Dave Ramsey is to remember that debt is not a tool. It is a method to make banks wealthy, not you. Banking is making money off of your back. They want you to take out loans. They want you to charge your credit card, and they want you to make minimum payments because they are charging you exorbitant amounts, and they are building their wealth instead of you building yours. When you're talking about credit card debt, it is one of the most dangerous because it is so easy just to charge what you want. I'll pay for it later, thinking that we'll have the money or that we'll go ahead and pay it. And so many times people do this, and it's a vicious cycle that spirals out of control and gets them in big trouble. They'll make minimum payments. I have a video, check it out below, where I talk about what happens when you make minimum payments on a credit card, and I give an example of that. Check that video out for further detail. But here we just want to focus on the fact that you need to stop the credit card usage. Stop using them. And if you are disciplined and you do use them, you need to make sure you're paying them off monthly so you're not paying that interest. Again, I always tell people to use that with caution. If you don't have the discipline, cut those credit cards up and get rid of them. Now, personal loans are another element people get into. They want something, so they get a loan for it. Maybe it's a $10,000 loan for a home improvement, or to go purchase something that they can't get a loan, like an auto loan, but maybe they want to go buy something that requires a substantial amount of money. Some people will use personal loans and then go take a fancy vacation. Those are depreciative transactions. You've lost the value and you're paying so much more for those. Now, in Susan's case, she used a personal loan at a much lower interest rate to reduce all the high interest credit cards that she had accumulated. But she made a decision to not use those credit cards anymore. She was able to pay off her personal loan much quicker and saved a lot on the interest going forward. So it was a positive move for her. Personal loans should be used with extreme caution. Most people are familiar with mortgages. Mortgages are a forced savings because every month you're making a payment toward your asset that not only is reducing the amount you owe, so the value of your house is going up and the amount you owe is going down, increasing your net worth. Where people fall into a problem is they extend how much house they are buying. They go to the 30-year mortgage, they put minimal down, if any down, and they overextend. People spending 40, 50, 60% of their income on a house. They're house poor. They're one tragedy away from bankruptcy. Make sure your housing doesn't take up more than 25% of your net pay. That should be all of your housing. Taxes, insurance, the whole 9 yards. Don't become house poor. Get in the house, pay it off, build equity, and move up from there. But don't overextend yourself. Be patient. So now that we've looked at some various types of debt, let's look at a debt management strategy. We have to come up with a plan on how we are going to get out of debt. We can't just say, well, I'm going to make payments. That's not a plan. That's the bank's plan. Just keep paying as little on it as we tell you and you'll be fine is a surefire way to be paying extraordinary amounts of interest over the course of whatever it is you have on those loans and credit cards. So let's sit down, make a plan, write out all of your debts, smallest to largest. Put how much you owe, put what the minimum payments are, and put what the interest rates are on those. And then you need to decide. And only you can make this decision. You can do the Snowball Method, where you take the smallest amount, regardless of the interest rate, and you pay the minimum on everything else, and you put as much as you can on that smallest amount to have that emotional victory. Then you take the money you were paying on that one when it's paid off and move it to the next amount. And you continue that snowball until you paid all your debts off. Now again, you're not considering what your high interest or low interest is. You're simply looking for the emotional victory. Now, if you want to do it mathematically and you want to tackle the largest interest first because you want to save as much on the interest payments, that's fine. Make a plan. What is the highest interest payments you have? All the others make minimum payments on and put as much as you can on that highest interest to get that paid off as quickly as possible. Now, again, I'm talking about credit card debt, all consumer debts, personal loans, student loans. I'm not talking about your mortgage. Your mortgage is a special type of loan. It is okay. The reason I'm adamant about getting you out of debt is because debt wreaks havoc on people's emotional well-being. I have a video we did recently on the stress of money. Please check that out. It's really informative on things you can do to help overcome the stress of money. And this is one of the biggest things you can do is getting out of debt. It removes a level of stress, and that emotional stress impacts you physically as well. Do this for your well-being physically and emotionally. Make a debt strategy plan. Suze Orman says, carrying debt is like a ball and chain around your ankle, dragging you down financially, emotionally, and physically. The cost of debt is so much more than people realize if you're not taking the time and doing the math to see how much that debt is costing you. And that interest is accumulating over time, reducing the amount of disposable cash you have to invest in things that are of value, experiences now, and your financial future. Those are both vital things. We need to increase our cash flow, and the easiest way to increase our cash flow is to reduce our debt load. Let's look at John and Jane. This is a couple that had wanted to retire, but they were unable to retire when they had planned because they still had debt. They still owed on their house. They still had 2 car payments. They had some credit card payments. They had debt that was causing them to need an extraordinary amount of income during retirement that they did not have. Between their Social Security and their retirement savings, it would not cover their cost of living and the debts they had carried. If they had taken a strategic plan and paid off their debts, then the amount that they have would have covered their cost of living, because you don't have the mortgage, the car payments, and some of these other debts month to month requiring that excessive amount of income. When you reduce debt, it also reduces the amount that you'll need when you try to become financially free. So then when you're putting that extra money that you're not paying on debt towards your financial freedom, you get to that financial freedom quicker because you have a lower amount that you require to live the life you want. The money that you save from the debt that you're not paying can then be used for investing toward your financial freedom, impacting the compounding effect. We have a video we did on compound interest. So the amount that you have to invest is much less. And when you get out of debt, you have this great source of income. Now, if you're strapped with debt, if you have several credit cards, student loans, other personal loans, and you just can't seem to make ends meet, one of the things you can do instead of consolidating is take the time, make out a plan. Before you do this, make out your plan, how much you plan on paying each of those amounts, and call your creditor, call the company and ask them if there's a way they can reduce the amount of interest. If you can negotiate with them and let them know you have a game plan and you are trying to get this paid off, they will often be open to that because they sense that you might be on the verge of not being able to pay them back and they want their money. But go into it with a plan. Go into it with a strategy that you can show them that you are making headway and you have a game plan and you need their help with it. Part of that game plan is you need to assess your financial situation. You need to look at all of your income and you need to look at all of your expenses. And I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to be straightforward with you. Don't call the creditor asking them to do you a favor if you're not willing to make some sacrifices yourself. Maybe you need to not eat out so much. Maybe you need to not buy some designer clothing. There may be some things you can do to help reduce your spending. Maybe you need to cut out some streaming services, something showing good faith that you are reducing your costs, but you're still trying to make ends meet and you need their assistance. So you have a budget and you have a plan that you can present to them. Do some homework. Familiarize yourself with debt consolidation, debt settlement, and credit counseling. Make sure you're doing your homework prior to taking this step. This will help you realistically determine how much you can pay each month, because you don't want to call a creditor and ask for a lower interest rate and promise to pay X amount of dollars when you actually can't pay that amount. You don't want to break your promise. You are going on good faith that they will help you if you stick to your end. So make a plan and stick to it. Then present your case. Be prepared to show them proof of income, show them your budget, show them proof of your expenses. And thus you cutting out some non-essentials shows them that you're not being frivolous with your money in other ways as you're attempting to get out of debt. Explain to them how you're struggling to make current payments and how your repayment plan would help you regain control of your financial situation. Be honest, be transparent, but be persistent. Then have that honest discussion with them. Discuss the term. The terms may include lower interest rates, extended terms to reduce the amount that you have to pay each month. Whatever the case may be, that they can work with you to help you regain your financial equilibrium. Make a plan with them and then make sure you get that in writing. The reason you need this in writing is in case there's a dispute, you have proof that it was an agreement. Make sure you get it in writing. Don't just take their word that you can just go ahead and make a payment, or you can have this lower rate or a lower payment or longer terms without the written proof you're reliable. Please make sure you get that in writing once you come to terms with them and agree on something that is beneficial for both parties. Then stick to the plan. It is crucial once you come to this agreement that you stick to the plan and make your payments on a regular basis, that you don't miss them, and that you keep the plan intact so that you are going on good faith with them and you get that debt paid off and gain control of your finances once again. So another example we have is Emily, who had 10 different credit cards with over $30,000 of debt combined. She made a plan. She negotiated with some of the creditors and got lower interest rates on them, but she presented with a strategic plan and she used the Snowball Method. She paid off the lowest amount first, and within 2 years she was able to get rid of that $30,000 of of debt and regain her financial stability. Then she was able to take the money that she was saving from all of that credit card payment and put it toward her house. She was able to get her house paid off early, and then the amount that she was paying on her house and the extra amount was then invested. It led her to her financial freedom. She was able to gain control of her finances. She was able to reduce her emotional and mental stress, and she was able to make headway toward her financial independence and freedom faster than she ever imagined, because she went into it with a plan, she was strategic, she was committed, and she received the reward of financial freedom. But it's important, once you set your mind to this, that not only do you get yourself out of debt, but then you stay out of debt. One of the best ways to make sure you do that is, once you have your debt paid off, is to build up an emergency fund that is accessible. Don't invest it. Put it into a high yield savings account and keep it accessible in case of an emergency. Then if you foresee things that you may need, look to the future. Think 5 years down the road. Am I going to need a new car? Or my kids going to need help with a wedding or with a car or with college? Are there expenses on my house? Do I need a new roof? Is there a remodel that needs to be done? If so, then those are the things you start establishing a sinking fund. You don't invest that amount. You set a certain amount aside. If you estimate that you're going to need something in 5 years, you divide the amount you expect that it's going to cost within that 5 years and make monthly payments to yourself within a sinking fund that is in a high yield savings. So when you need a new car, guess what? You don't have to go get a loan and start the debt management plan again. You go to the car dealer and you say, I've been planning for this because I knew I'd need a new car. Here's a check. That is a great feeling of continuing that debt-free lifestyle. Once you do that, guess what? You keep paying yourself towards your next car. If you plan on you're going to need another car in 5 years or 10 years, you make those sinking fund payments to yourself. You have multiple sinking funds going on at once. But remember, you don't have a house payment. You don't have car payments. So it's easy to allocate those funds toward the sinking fund now, because you did your due diligence and made a strategic plan to get out of debt and take control of your finances. Avoid debt at all costs. If you must use debt, use it with caution and don't use it for things that are non-essential. Then make plans and stick to it to get out of debt. The thing that you have to remember is, when you don't have debt, you have to be planning for things and expenses so you don't go into debt. That's why having an emergency fund is essential. You might be 18 years old, you might be 38 years old. It doesn't matter. Start setting aside small amounts each paycheck toward an emergency fund so you don't ever have to accumulate debt. People look at me sometimes and say, oh, everyone needs debt. No, they don't. There are ways to avoid it. It requires sacrifice. It requires humility, not feeling like you have to have certain things. And if you can avoid debt at all costs, you'll reach your financial freedom much quicker. I hope this helps you towards your financial freedom. Don't be overwhelmed. Don't feel ashamed if you do have debt. If you're overwhelmed by it, make a plan. Sit down and be strategic. This isn't to shame you about the debt that you have. This is to encourage you. There is a way out. Just be proactive. I hope this helps you in your journey toward your financial freedom, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Simply Money.